Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this presentation of a webinar called A Baker's Dozen, the Creative Classroom Strategies for Fostering Imagination and Innovation. This webinar is presented by Dr. Christine Deitz, and she used to work at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, but I think that she will do a proper introduction of herself in a couple of minutes. If you're joining us today and you haven't joined us before, please be aware that this session is recorded and therefore please turn off your microphone and turn off your camera. If you have any questions during the session, just pop your question in the chat. I will monitor them. And if they need an answer on the spot, I can see if I can provide that answer. And if I can't, I can see if I can break into Christine's webinar. But most of the time we see that questions can wait until the end of the session. After Christine's presentation, we'll quit recording and then we have ample time to answer some of the questions or to exchange some information. At this point, I'd really like to welcome Christine Deitz. Christine Deitz is not only a very high valuated and estimated colleague. I'm excited to work with her. I'm excited that she decided to join our invitation, but Christine is also a very near and dear personal friend. And we've collaborated over the past couple of years in several projects together. Christine, this is where the floor is yours. And take us away.
Thank you so much, my dear friend Eleanor. I first met Eleanor at a professional conference where I personally watched her memorize the audience from her first words and held them all the way to the end. And I said, "This is a special lady. I must congratulate her." So I'm a huge admirer of Eleanor personally, plus her work, and I could not be more honored to be with you today. So, hello, my name is Christine Deitz, and thank you. My last name can be challenging. For some people, it is simply Deitz, like sweets and feast, but please, I'm Christine. And I did retire from some major positions about 2 years ago and have been busy with projects such as today presenting to the National Dutch Knowledge Center. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to travel with my husband, who never was able to take off more than 1 week of vacation in his entire working life. So you might even see some very familiar pictures in today's presentation. So a baker's dozen. The first thing Eleanor asked me, she said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" I said, "Well, I've got a great session for your teachers today. It's called a baker's dozen." She said, "Well, what is that?" Well, we'll explain. What is a baker's dozen? Apparently, that is something that is known here in the US that I'm happy to talk about. We'll share some tips and tricks for engaging students in some very clever learning lessons. Tuesday's child is information strategies. What do you do the day after a project? What happens next? And then we may not have an opportunity due to the structure of our session to share out from the audience, but hopefully there will be opportunities for participants to share ideas. This is where we get our best ideas from collaborating with each other. And then finally, I will share my personal email and a way to stay in touch if there's any way I can be of service to you, any of you. I'm so happy to do so moving forward. So, me by the numbers, I have over 40 years of teaching experience in the classroom. And I think that's really important to stress that I am elementary trained and I spent most of my professional years in the classroom. Only the last 7 did I was I university based. Now I've taught at the university for nearly 25 years. I'm still teaching graduate courses to teachers who are interested in obtaining their, in the US, their gifted and talented licensure. It's an add-on to their teaching license. I am still an instructor for the university. My specialty is curriculum and affective needs. I also have experience. You see all that beautiful silver hair? Oh, yes, that's my middle school years for sure. I loved my middle schoolers, and in the US, it's 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade students. And then you literally hold the door open for them and just push them out to the high school and tell them to have a great life. But it was so important to have a strong, gifted, focused teacher working with our special children in the middle school. And I spent plenty of years in the middle school helping teachers and helping students and working with my students. Loved it. For 10 years, I was the what we call a seminar teacher at a middle school. And for that particular position, there really wasn't a curriculum. There was a framework, very much like what you have in your educational system. There's a framework, and you could attach various content onto that. So I spent a lot of years creating uh, activities and projects, problem-based learning, project-based learning. We competed in several very interesting competitions, such as National History Day, where they picked a topic. The lessons that you're going to see today, the ideas, the strategies you see today will come from those years that I taught seminar. I apparently did a good enough job with my one particular school that the district asked me to replicate the program across Arkansas, my state. I live in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're next to Texas. Arkansas's largest school district, the Little Rock School District. So the program was in 10 to 14 middle schools. So I trained the teachers, I modeled lessons, etc. So you're getting the best of the best for 15 years of my work with the kiddos. In the United States, we have something that is called a National Board Teacher Certification, and it's a professional recognition at the national level. You put together a portfolio of your work that includes videos and writings and analysis of your teaching, and it's submitted to a jury of professionals, and they decide if you are an accomplished educator or not. It's difficult to earn. You have 3 to 5 years to earn this recognition. The interesting thing about this is that I have 2 of those national recognitions. One is in social studies and one is in exceptional needs/gifted. I'm the only person, the only educator in Arkansas who is crazy enough to go through the process twice. But because those were my 2 areas of concentration, I just felt it was important for me personally to know if I was good enough, if my teaching, if my delivery was good enough at the national level to work with not only my students, but students across the nation. Yes, I've been doing professional development for 25 years. I can remember my first session. I stood in front of a lovely small group of teachers, and I had everything written on 3x8 index cards, and my hands shook so violently I dropped my cards. So I think I've come a long way from that, but everybody's got to start somewhere, and that was just my starting point. Very proud of over 30 years have been dedicated to gifted education, and all that involves. So that's kind of me by the numbers. Again, we're sharing the best of the best lessons that my students enjoyed. I look forward to teaching them every year. So get to a baker's dozen. When you go into a bakery shop and you're buying donuts or bagels, you can ask for a baker's dozen. Now, we all know a dozen is 12 items. But a baker's dozen, the baker will actually throw in a extra donut or an extra bagel or an extra pastry as a way to say thank you. So, as a way for me to say thank you, we're going to share 12 of the best tested ideas for engaging students in learning today. And there is a baker's dozen in there as a way to say thank you. Now, I said you might see some pictures today that'd be familiar to you. One of the highlights of my year was a it was only 3 days, but they were magical, where my husband and I spent them in Amsterdam. That is a city I cannot wait to go back to, and I hope to go back to it very soon because I learned so much about the Dutch people, the fabulous Dutch people that Americans don't really know. And I have been to Holland before, but I didn't know these things. For example, there's over 1,000 historic windmills. Now, you may know that, but not everybody else knows it. And they're operating today and they're used for water management. So there's in Amsterdam, you can trolley down to see some of the beautiful historic windmills. We all equate windmills with Holland, yes, but they're still working. It's just a fabulous contraption, really. And then we all want to say thank you to Holland, the Netherlands, for inventing gin. We don't know too many 5 o'clocks anywhere around the world that doesn't happen with your fabulous invention of gin, which to me tastes like pine tar, which is appropriate because what it comes from juniper or something like that. But leave it to you to come up with something so clever. And then, yeah, you thought of how to turn carrots orange. Who thinks like that? Well, the Dutch do. So thank you for our orange carrots. And then you are the Netherlands produces 80% of the world's flower bulbs, and you're known as the flower shop of the world. So we went down to the flower market and strolled along the many varieties of flowers, and it is so inspirational. Such a beautiful country. And thank you for the cheese that you produce. It's absolutely delicious in Holland. The Dutch have been making cheese since 400 AD, and it's a major export. Yeah, so France has nothing on the Dutch. I'm just saying, your cheese is world class. And then, need I say more? Here's Heineken. We were at a restaurant, believe it or not, in Portugal, and husband asked for a beer, and the waiter was so proud. He says, "Well, we only serve Heineken here," and so. There are people who are just so dedicated to this fantastic brew, and there it is on full display on the canals in Amsterdam. Do you know that the Netherlands have the tallest people in the world? You probably see you know this, but we outside the country do not know this. The Dutch are the tallest people in the world, and the average male is 6 feet tall. Now, perspective, I'm 5'7", 5 feet 7 inches, and Mr. Christian here just towered over me, and I just thought that was just so interesting. And the people are absolutely beautiful. And as beautiful and as tall and as brilliant as you are also, the Dutch are also known to be the most direct and honest people in the world. It is just accepted culturally. So well done, you. You're just going to tell it like it is. So these are things that you know that people outside of Holland may not know, but it's just things that you are used to. And as I prepared for today, I just thought, Holland is really so amazing. And in learning about the Dutch educational system, there's three major points that I was really impressed with, and that is the Dutch system is committed to equity and a focus of inclusion in education. And when you think about it, there are many cultures, educational systems, including the US, that tend to compartmentalize children according to ability. And Holland, I think, does a proper job of making sure children are included and mainstreamed as much as possible because that's how society works. We are not compartmentalized as adults. So it is an inclusive society that works together. And we start that in Holland from the beginning. It's a mindset. Um, I do love this. That study showed that Dutch children are the happiest in the world. Well done. I think it's because of your Sinterklaas that's coming probably toward the end of the week and around the holidays. Very happy people. And yes, I've seen pictures of your Canal Fest where all the boats are there and everybody is all over the place and enjoying themselves. What a fabulous culture the Dutch people have. The other point that I was really impressed with is that the flexibility that is just accepted and woven into the Dutch educational system, where children are able to move about according to ability, strengths, and also receive the support and structure where it is needed. So no one is from what I've been able to understand, no one is like lockstep. You are helped along the way, taught along the way according to your needs as a child. I was just so impressed with the way the system is set up and that these are the main tenets and understandings of which your curriculum are built. So we begin our baker's dozen with Monday morning. That so many times as an educator, I thought, here is Sunday night. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do Monday morning with my kids? There's no time to really start a major project because we need time to prepare. Or maybe I need time to prepare, but I need some interesting ways to engage my young minds and keep them productive. My goal every day was to have the kids talk about their seminar class as the first thing when they get home, and mom or dad ask them, what did you do at school today? I want them to talk about my class. So my Monday mornings needed to be engaging. It was our wake up call to the week. So here we go. Many times I'd start the lesson with simply a picture, no caption, no explanation, just a photograph. And then I would ask the students to write 3 questions related to the photo. I would encourage them. Now, I must say, this works from the early grades, 1 and 2, grades 1 and 2, early grades. Kindergartners will need a partner, but all the way up. You can do this all the way up to high school. I do this with my adults. So there really isn't an age. There's no age limit to this. But 3 questions. I encourage them to start with a how question or a what question, or most importantly, a why question, and then discuss those questions in small groups. Now, what's happening is that the students are using the clues from the photos, the questions in the dialogue to create inferences or educated guesses about the photographs. And they're not hard to find. You can just type in Google or into your search engine, interesting photos from, and then I would give it a decade. So you just don't want interesting photos because you're going to get everything under the planet, but kind of limit it to the time. I love putting up historical photographs because the kids really don't have context for historical photographs. So let me show you what I mean. The last step is to then debrief as a whole class, and we'll see who comes closest. So I found this one. I thought this was really interesting. And what do we see here? Well, we see a woman painting a cow. That's the broadest understanding. As we look a little closer, she's wearing a very particular coat, almost like a lab coat. She's got a bucket of paint on her arm. And that's just not just painting a cow, we're painting stripes on a cow. And the cow's kind of anchored there so he can't run away. And he's turning around because he knows that something's happening. Believe it or not, it was this, this picture came up right away when I typed in interesting photos. But the answer as to what this was actually took quite a bit of research. I'll let you think about it for a second. And what I do with my students is I have them look all around the photo for clues, because the first thing they're going to see are the stripes. Notice the shoes. Notice the paint on the cow's legs. That the cow is totally black. Those legs have been painted. And then we've got stripes. And why would that be? As it turns out, in England during World War II, they painted in the rural areas, they painted white paint on the animals. So when they wandered into the road at night, the vehicle's headlights would pick up the paint and not hit the cows. That was a way to make sure no one was hitting the cows on the rural roads in England, but everybody was encouraged to paint their cows. If they were free roaming cows or the cows would cross the road, get out of the pasture or such, that was a problem. So here she is painting the cow. I thought that was very interesting. If you go into your local archives, you'll find just very, very rich photos. This photograph came from the Los Angeles, California area. You will be able to find wonderful historic pictures of various cities and ports in Holland and the Netherlands. This particular photo interested me and my students because of the way the gentleman was dressed and what he was doing. He was selling papers. I really don't think papers are being sold too much on the streets anymore, but that's how the news was shared. The headlines, if you focused in there, it says farmers stop tobacco sale. Tobacco is a huge industry in the United States and even larger as an export. We export a lot of tobacco. There's lots of conversations that can come about this. He is not dressed. He's dressed professionally, not to scare people off, but there's a lot of detail about his dress that shows that he's a working man. His shoes in particular are very telling. Love this picture. You know all about this photo and why those houses are like that. People from the outside of Holland and outside of Amsterdam do not know why those buildings are leaning. They think that something's the matter with them. Well, there's nothing the matter with them. They were designed like that. And the hooks at the very top here are the giveaway as to why they need to lean forward so your piano doesn't get scraped up as you're hauling it up to that top window. So all the buildings in Amsterdam lean. It's not because they're sinking on the piers or in the land. It's just, it's brilliant, brilliant. See, this is what I mean, the brilliant Dutch. But you could talk about these historic buildings. The other really neat thing for me to think about is the fact that these buildings, even though this photograph could be 100 years old, those buildings look just like that today. The Netherlands preserves its history. Very cool. This is a photograph of children playing outside of their school in Amsterdam. A fun activity to do with this photo. Yes, ask your 3 questions. What are they doing? But then take your students a step further and ask them to talk about what's in the picture. So identify all the objects that are in the picture. And then ask them to consider what is not in the picture that perhaps would be there today. Would the children at your school be playing in the alleyway? Would they be dressed that way? Would they have devices in their hands? Would they have playground equipment? These children had nothing but their imagination. And it might be fascinating to them to think about what children did during their free time. And They just know to stay out of the street. Now, there is a lady, a matron who is more toward the street side, but they're having a great time there, and they could count the number of boys and girls and say, is that representative of their class? And does the child have shoes on or not shoes on? So they can talk about all sorts of things, but ask questions, make inferences. The answer, like the cow, the painting on the cow. Now, I was just curious. I had to find out, why would they be painting a cow? Was it an experiment? What was that about? The answer is not so important as the discussions and creating those questions and sparking that curiosity in the mind. So interesting pictures are available everywhere. I tend to go to the archives and find things that I find curious. And I figured, well, if I don't know about it, or I think it's interesting or fascinating, or know that I could provide enough questions to keep them engaged and interested, then I'll start building a slideshow for them. I just threw this in there because this is the most fascinating. I love this photo. Maps are a great resource. Throw a map up there and have your children discuss the maps. Why do cities sprout up around river systems? And why there's so many canals in Amsterdam? Now, your children will know this. Your culture knows this. Everybody knows this. But what is fascinating to me, what I so appreciate about this map, is how the city grew out from the sea, and how just the engineering process to tame that water and get it all canaled and channeled is fascinating. And then the different rings that come out from Amsterdam. I just think it's brilliant. So I threw a map in there because maps are just fun to discuss. And I don't think children see maps enough these days to see these graphic representations. Number two is an event map. And for our younger kids, they will think, oh, I don't have any events. I don't have any major events. Well, I tend to argue, yes, they do. Yes, of course they do. An event map is putting events in chronological order. And we always start with, where and when were you born? And then any special vacations and trips. Birth of siblings, a special personal event like a birthday or a family or a hobby, special classes or interests. And when I tell you, this works with everybody. I mean, ages and backgrounds. And I've worked in schools where my children had never seen, or let alone been on an escalator. They had no idea. They didn't know what a penguin, and I'm talking seventh graders, and you're probably shocked that this can be in the very rural parts of my state 20 years ago. The children didn't know what a penguin was, and they had not experienced an escalator, the moving stairs, which most people have. So exposing them to different ideas was so important, and having them dig into the significant, even the smallest details of their life is very, very important. It helps build their self-esteem. It helps them think in chronological order. And this is literally one of the first activities we do at the beginning of the year. It helps me learn about the students. It helps the students learn about each other, and they stay up for several months so we can appreciate and continue to learn about the children as individuals. And of course, they stay up through Parent Visitation Day so the parents can see our wonderful work. It does go through several iterations. So we will do a simple outline first, and then we will have drawings attached to it, sometimes photographs. And I'll show you some examples of event maps. But you may already do this. It's just an idea that's been around forever. It's a popular idea, but what I love about it, that it works, and the children don't mind doing it. That no one has ever said, we did this last year, and then didn't want to engage. They all do because it's about them. And then, of course, they get to share. So, first grade example would be where I would help them with the with the timeline, get everything in order. I'd have some printed graphics that they could choose from and they could color. And then we would hopefully start with their writing. And yeah, there you see some eraser marks and things like that. But yeah, we would try to get it as nice as possible. And I typed out my timeline and we put it on a nice big piece of paper. So that is a great example of early childhood. And the 0 says I was born. Well, I needed to work. That one got past me somehow. We needed to get a date and a place on that, didn't we? But I love this number 4. I started coloring. I just thought that was adorable. A little more sophisticated as the kids got older. You can see this is my 7th grade example. We have technology now. Our puppy died. Oh, and I'm sorry. And also Michael Jackson passed away. That was, gosh, what year was that? 2011. So this is one of my older examples. We and from one of my affluent families because yeah, we've traveled to France. So that's that's that is a pretty significant event. So very cool there. And so yeah, but they really enjoyed doing the top and bottom. And this is an excellent example of how they filled the space. And they have some major events and they have some current events in there as well. So it can be about them and also they can research what are the major events that happened during these different years. And then we've got Miss Sarah's timeline here. And I love the fact that she used photographs and she has everything dated. And then I used my fancy scissors that they could use to borrow. And the scrapbooking scissors and they trimmed around. I used different colored photographs. Notice how the purple picture matches the purple explanation. So you can do a lot with color and a lot with the events. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be very simple. So this one has five major events. And that shows that that student maybe had more ideas, but then edited it down to the 5 most important events. Third idea we could do, a personal inventory survey um, on a piece of paper, 4 circles. Give them a category. Talk about gaming. Every child wants to do something, talk about gaming. If they talk about gaming, they don't even know they're thinking or working. So what games are they interested in? The point of this exercise is to organize, to capsulate their ideas into a circle, a contained space. So they're not all over the place. It's very confined. And there's a characteristic of that is linked to creativity, where the more creative the child is, the more the child enjoys interacting inside a space. They say this, they say, not me, experts will tell you, according to their research, the less creative person doesn't like to interact inside a space. So, as many times as possible, I get children to fill in circles, to interact inside a space, to break inside that boundary and mess it up. So it somehow it ignites creativity and gives children permission to break into a space. So we're going to put our gaming ideas in there, what we enjoy about academics, sports, and I can't read the last one because I've got a little something covering it up, but it says, oh, the arts. Always promoting the arts. So music, art, it could be electronic. It could be, AI now creates music. So, but ballet, dance, anything expressive, that human experience, the arts. So we'll have the students do that as a personal interest survey. Again, get them up on the wall, talk about them, have sharing with our partners, and then share out in the class. I always ask, is there anybody who'd like to share with the group? I typically don't make everybody present because they're just not ready yet. But I do encourage sharing time. This is actually harder to do than it looks, because finding cartoons without a caption that makes sense on its own, it's just more difficult. I mean, they're not readily available. You got to do some research. I had the most success with the Far Side, FARSIDE, Far Side cartoons. They're by Larson, an artist named Larson. His cartoons are out there in the universe. You can get them readily. Find something that you think would interest your kids. Now, you don't need more than 5 or 6 of these. They'll last you the whole year because you're not going to do this every day. You will just do this at that moment where you've got maybe 15 minutes left in class, and you don't want them just sitting there visiting with their neighbor, or God forbid, pulling their phones out, which sometimes they do in the US. So put a cartoon up there and they have to create the caption. So the picture is, we've got a scientist walking down the stairs with a tray of test tubes, and he, unbeknownst to him, there is a roller skate that his foot is about to land on. And the two scientists at the very bottom are trying to, or having a discussion. So our task is to figure out, or to create a line. What could those two be talking about? Or what's going to happen next in this photo? We're going to write the caption for this cartoon. An example would be, the skill is inference, but the caption I created as the example would be, George and Tyrus discuss cleaning up the lab before the boss arrives. And it becomes quite clever and quite funny. And it just shows Dr. Fred, the head of research, was responsible for carrying the test tubes. So the kids will come up with some really interesting statements, but we don't give them the answer. There is no answer because Larson didn't provide it. And even if he did, we can come up with some very clever ideas. But to begin and to work through the process, we said, well, what details do you notice? Then write the caption, then have them discuss or write what action happens next. So then they'll get a big laugh, then the bell rings and the children leave and they're quite happy. Hopefully they'll go home and they'll talk about this with their family members. You will love this, and you probably already do this. Now, I've got 6 granddaughters, six of them. One of the activities they love to do with me in the evening is that we will play this or that. The internet has 1,000 examples of these for free slideshows ready to go, and you play this or that, where they just literally show you a comparison picture. And we'll pull up the first one here in a second. Yes, dogs or cats. What do you prefer? Are you a kitty cat person or a puppy dog person? So the setup for this instructionally is, would you rather? And on each of the following, you're going to discuss with a partner why you would prefer one over the other, and most importantly, the justification, which is why. So this whole slide show is available out there, but I wanted to show you some interesting things that you could do with it. It's already prepared. I've totally ripped this off. I just downloaded it, but some really interesting things. Are we going to be, are we a summer person or are we a winter sports person? Are we a coffee or a hot chocolate? And so on. I like this picture for a couple reasons. We can do a couple things with this. The most obvious is, this is sushi from a Japanese restaurant. It is also a steak. A more sophisticated question to your students would be, do you prefer complex foods, which is the sushi, or a simple food, which is a steak? It's just basically you put a piece of meat on a grill and it's cooked. You could ask, in the complexity question, it has the different components that they could identify. And on the protein side, both have protein, but on the meat side, it is a simple protein. It was not altered in any way. One is a cold food. It is served cold, and the other one is served hot. So you can use the same picture, but depending on the level of your students, you can ask a variety of questions beside the most obvious. Are we camping? Are we glamping in a luxury place? So, are we a morning? That's not a sunset and a night. That is a morning and a night. So the reason I kept this slide is that it's really important that you know the question before you put up the slide, or you're going to have the kids talking about all these different things. But that is morning and night. Are we barefoot? Do we love our bare feet, or do we like our shoes, and so on? Here's another example of where you can ask a variety of questions just having the one slide. So on one hand, we have pizza, and on the other hand, we have spaghetti. They're both complex dishes, but the one on the left, you can simply, do you prefer pizza or spaghetti? Or you can ask, do you prefer food that you can eat with your hand, which would be the pizza, or would you prefer to eat food with utensils, which would be the spaghetti? So just depending on the slide, you can use your very clever mind to create different questions to approach it in different ways. And are we going to the movies or reading a book? So, but what you're really asking, are you a visual learner, or do you want to get your information from the pages of a book? Somebody telling you a story versus you playing that beautiful story and movie reel in your mind. This is another complex slide. Obviously, we've got electric guitar, which means more modern music, and then we have the classical on the right. But you also have an instrument that requires electricity that needs to be plugged in before it makes music. And the other one, the centuries old instruments that all you do is pick up, and you have everything you need to make music. So again, same slide, but different levels of training. How much training do you need to play an electric guitar? How much training do you need before that violin sounds pleasant to the ear? Totally different training systems. Same with this next picture. When we've got, our break dancing, and then we have our classic ballet, of course. Our break dancing is it's more free form and expressive, whereas the ballet, that's classically trained years and years and years in dedication. Whereas the boys out on the street can just throw it together like that. So interesting. The kids, when they look at it, they say, oh, I want to break dance, and no way are we going to get my feet all tied up in those shoes. But try to have them think beyond the picture into the concepts, different things like that. That's kind of obvious. Love that. Are we going to the beach, or are we going to the pool? We have potatoes, the same item, but prepared two different ways. They will have an opinion about that. If those were adult beverages, we'd have a wonderful conversation about that for sure. This is, of course, do you want salty or sweet? The younger ones say, oh, I want a cracker or I want candy. So that's the obvious, but try to think about it as salty, preferences of salty like chips, pretzels, etc. Or do you want the sweet taste? The milk is chocolate strawberry. You could spend all day on this slide alone. Do we want the prepared fried rice? There's the cultural aspect between the Asian food versus Italian food. You've got elements of fresh food in both. You've got we need chopsticks for one, utensils for another. So very interesting discussion can be had just on those simple slides. Gold, silver, of course, and we'll get to this. I think this is the simplest one that I have in the collection, where students would look like, if you had all this food sitting out on a buffet, which one would you grab first? Would you grab the apple first? Would you grab the banana first? I love this one because the discussions can be, do you prefer flowers or candy? If you were going to gift one of these, to a person, have them think of a person, which one would you gift it to? So they've just broken out of their personal preferences and now they're thinking about someone else. And here's our baker's dozen. Do we want a baker's dozen of donuts or bagels? So one is sweet and one is more savory. Car choices. I provided a list of questions for you that you don't go through all of them, of course, just pick a couple. And this is our debriefing questions. They've had their conversations with their partners. Now it's time to debrief as a class. And they can do this writing in their journals. They can discuss this with their partner first, but you want to know about their thinking. And the questions that are in the different color have more to do with their affective needs. So I highlighted them for a reason. So why is it okay for you to have a difference of opinion and for you to enjoy activities that are different from your friends? Why is that okay? It'll be very healthy for them to discuss why it is okay to have their own opinion. Especially during your middle grade years when all you want to do is fit in with your peers. Why is it okay for you to have a preference while respecting everybody else's? So there's a list of 9 questions that you can use in your debrief. They can use it as a journal reflection if you wish. Again, you don't go through all the questions, just some of them. I borrowed this idea from one of my favorite grade 1 teachers, and she would have them do this every Monday. She would give them a sentence, and then the students would sketch out a picture of what it is. And she would simply say, "Oh no, the snowman had s'mores." Now, s'mores is that sandwich we make over the campfire that has graham cracker and then a toasted marshmallow and a chocolate square. So they put it over a campfire. And I realized that maybe people in different countries don't make s'mores as much as we do. It's the campfire treat. But the snowman obviously got too close to the fire and while toasting his marshmallows and melted. But the kids just see oh no, the snowman made s'mores. Then they need to fill the picture with all the details that would create the visual for that sentence. And we just call this, "I must totally draw this now." Creates a little bit of urgency and a little bit of curiosity. "Oh no, I must totally draw this now." And it says, "Oh no, the bag of flour exploded." So I happened to find a picture of a young lady on the internet where the flour did blow up in her face. But how fun for them. They can draw a sack of flour and they can draw a face and they can draw a representation of flour all over. So the sentences are designed to create a visual in their mind, and then they put that down on a piece of paper, or they can draw on their computer or device. "Oh no, I wore 2 different pairs of shoes today." Now, I know most of my teacher friends have totally walked into the school building with 2 different shoes on because they're getting dressed before the sun gets up and can't tell the difference between a brown pair and a blue pair. But sometimes that happens to our kiddos as well. So, and I love this representation because it just shows a different perspective. So looking down on the shoes to see what the kids will come up with. And finally, "Oh no, the baby's eating spaghetti." And that's just fun for the kids to visualize. So this activity is called, "Oh no, I must totally draw this now." It teaches perspective. It teaches children to visualize something and then to get it down on paper. And then it's fun to see. It's not a drawing contest by any means, but who got the most details onto their piece of paper. So fun activity, great way to wake up that Monday morning crowd. Oh, one more. "Oh no, the dog ate my homework." "Oh no." Yeah. See what happens when we prompt our children that way. Let's start with imagine that. We've used our imagination a lot today. What happens when all you think about, since you were a very small child, are dots? Well, Yayoi Kusama did just that. Now, uh, Yayoi is a living artist. She's 97, born in 1929 in Japan, lived through World War II in Japan as a very young child, literally had her starving years that she talked about. There just wasn't anything to eat. She talked about it in a very tasteful way. But we love to incorporate at my university, in my classes, my curriculum, you'll always find where we're going to jumpstart an idea or a project with a biography about a real person. Biography is a real person. And it's really nice if you can get somebody who is still living that has a biography. This book is you can see it right there. Yayoi Kusama covered everything in dots and wasn't sorry. It is by the author Gilberti. Love this book, and I'll show you just a couple pages. This book, what's so unusual about it, she's a very colorful artist, but the pages are in black and white until the very end, when suddenly on the last pages, you'll see the artist, the drawing of the artist has orange hair, just like the cover. But the story talks about her process as an artist and how she was obsessed with dots. And wherever she went and whatever she could, she would decorate the apartment in dots. She put dots on clothing. She put dots on everything. Dots on everything. Clothing, hats, shoes. Didn't understand why, just I had to do it. Just she was very driven that way. The story's very interesting because as she was so busy putting dots on everything, she wrote a letter to another very famous artist, Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe is a artist from our western states, most famously New Mexico, out in the desert region of the United States. And Georgia's paintings are incredibly famous because of the detailed work her art focused on flowers and desert pictures. The center of flowers. So if you see a Georgia O'Keeffe, you cannot mistake it for anything else. Her art is very distinctive. So Yayoi knew about Georgia O'Keeffe, wrote Georgia O'Keeffe a letter. Georgia O'Keeffe happened to go to Japan, the city where Yayoi was, and encouraged Yayoi to come to the United States and study art and produce art. So somehow she got to New York. War's over, of course. She comes to New York and starts putting dots on everything. Became world famous. She displays still. She curates artwork all over the world, installations all over the world. Her most famous installations in the major museums, probably had some at your fabulous Amsterdam Museum of Art. Her mirrored walls, where the mirrors would reflect other images, so the whole room is filled with dots. She became obsessed with pumpkins, orange pumpkins, and that is when she became obsessed with her orange wig. That is a wig that she wears. Now she's 97, but still is thankfully still with us and still producing art installations around the world. You could find her. And her art is readily available on the internet, that you could find the examples, read the biography to the students to introduce students to this artist who is not well known in the United States. I think, of course, well known in the art world, but not to my average student sitting in an Arkansas classroom, and not necessarily to the teachers as well. What's special about the biographies I choose for my curriculum is that it tells the story of the eminent person beginning with their childhood. I want my students to see how someone uses their ideas and talents to grow into a person of eminence, how that focus and the passion stayed with them throughout their life. So as this story does, it starts, she's born, she's a young child, and she's thinking about dots, thinks about dots all the time. So you can find all sorts of fabulous pictures after you've read the biography to show the kids the art, and it's comprised of dots. Well, what can we do with that? Well, we're going to make our dot art come alive by covering a 3D object with dots. So you can do this with milk cartons, cereal boxes, classroom objects, and so it doesn't become tedious for the students. If you are well funded, you can actually buy very large markers. I used to have them, but the grandchildren ran through them. They used up all the paint inside the markers, but they have a sponge tip to these markers, and when you press down, it leaves a dot color. So a nice, about a 2-inch dot. And so we put dots all over the pages. And so that it was a very quick and easy process. Or you could find like a bottle cap or a large circle object like the end of a glue stick, and put paper or like a cotton pad with a rubber band, affix that at the end of a glue stick and have them dip that in paint. Then to change colors, all they'd need to do is switch out the cotton pad. But dot like that, it would be very tiresome, I think, for them to draw the dots individually. My kids would get bored with that and they'd stop 10 minutes in, no matter what we were doing. But if they can go dot, 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 they'd have a lot of fun with that. Tie it in with a science lesson. Talk about other objects where dots occur in nature, like on the moon is full of dots. Well, how did those dots get up there? Yeah, well, they just didn't appear. So how is the moon dotted? And bugs, how does nature use dots to help with survival? Ships have dots and etc. So where do we see dots in our normal life that either are man-created or created by nature, a natural phenomenon? And then you can talk about why are dots important to animals and insects, if we want to make it relevant to today, which I always like to do is take something abstract, make it real for the children, and then connect it to their everyday life. So before you know it, when they walk out of the classroom, they're going to be thinking about dots as well. Nothing like a great book cover to encourage our students to read. So this 8th idea for our Monday morning, our Baker's Dozen, is wrap your mind around this project. Have them create a book cover. This was a great activity for my students and very easy for me to pull together, because in our school library, the first thing the librarian would do, or the media specialist, as they're called now, when they received a new book, they take the book cover off, the one that comes, the cover that comes with the book, they take the book cover off and they discard it until I ask them, please save the book covers for me. I'm going to use them for a lesson. Oh, they're happy to do it. Before I had a laundry basket full of book covers. And they were the perfect map for students to use and served as an inspiration for them to take their favorite book and create a book cover for it. Of course, on the board or on a major display on my electronic chalkboard, classroom board, I would give them the basics, like you must include the title, a subtitle, the name of the author, illustrator. On the inside, we're going to have a summary and some information about the author that that they would have to research on their devices in order to create some of that information. A lot of it is already available at Amazon in a book review, but they are not allowed to use that. This has to be original work. We're not going to copy the work of somebody else's. And then they can use their imagination to draw and illustrate something that they'd like. And I like the illustration of the Harry Potter book because it's not a picture of Harry Potter. We simply have the lightning bolt from his forehead and also the glasses, which would be very telling that this is about Harry Potter. So we've got our book cover. Another idea related to our book is then to create a book review. So we've created our book cover. Well, how about a book review? And they are excellent. They're just excellent for having children share what book they're crazy about at the moment. I think gone are the days where we as educators have to create our own paper forms, our own book evaluation forms. ChatGPT did mine and did a better job than I ever could, and it was done literally in seconds. Let me show you what I did. I asked GPT to create a book review form appropriate for third grade students. And it came out, I mean, it took 2 seconds. It came out with this wonderful product that I didn't have to think about. And I used it, but first I looked at it critically. And these are the characteristics that I loved about this. It has a variety of questions. It's got check boxes that I can check. So it's got categories that are already created for me. I don't have to think about it. They can check a box. So that means I'm not going to tire out my students who don't want to write a lot. But yes, it does have components. This is for third grade, where they're going to fill in the blank or complete a question. And also give a justification. Would you recommend this book? Why or why not? And they've got to say yes or no and then defend their answer. At the bottom of the second page, you'll see that, and I left this on there so you could see, ChatGPT wanted to know, do I want this as a PDF, as a document, or something? Can I just print this out for you? So I left that on there. The kids would not see that, of course, but you can edit the response, you could add, you could subtract. So but the initial thinking is already done for you. You don't have to buy anything. It is free. You can adjust it for any grade level and any level of sophistication that you need. I've seen book review forms that had smiley faces on there, and the kids just had to check a box or circle their choice that they wanted. So just lovely use of AI to help us out in the classroom on a Monday morning. I hope I get to introduce this gentleman to you. The slides that I have used for this particular section are readily available on the internet with a search for magic trash. And I have cited the teacher right here. This next group of slides was created by a teacher, Miss Meyer. First name is not available on the slide, but she's an art teacher and it's available online just in a search. And this was created during COVID when the US schools were not meeting in person. That lasted anywhere in the US, depending on where you were. Remote learning occurred for a minimum of 3 months and in some cases extended to a year. During that time, we were required as educators to be very creative and to create as much online learning content as possible. I was lucky enough to find this lesson from Miss Meyer. I already had the book, Magic Trash, And we went from there. Like all the biographies I use in the classroom, it begins with our hero artist, Tyree Guyton, as a young child, curious about things, items that he would find in his neighborhood, on the street. These are discarded items, buttons that have popped off of coats, popsicle sticks found on the ground. Now, that never happened in Holland, but popsicle sticks that never made it into the recycle bin, different things like that. He would literally go around his neighborhood collecting trash, taking them home, and then thinking about what could he do with it. He called his trash magic trash. He is still alive today. And what he did with one neighborhood, you're just not going to believe. Here is her lesson and directions to the students. Listen to the book Magic Trash. And when you find this lesson on the internet, she's actually recorded herself reading the book. So in the classroom, you could read this book to your students, and it doesn't matter they can be high school, ready to go to college the next month. They will still enjoy this book. They will still enjoy this project. I promise you, even down to your youngest students. But listen to the book, read the book to them, listen to the book. Do a little research on the houses at the Heidelberg Street. It's well documented. Heidelberg Street is a street located in the city of Detroit, Michigan. It's the state that's shaped like a glove in the Midwest. It's up there by the Great Lakes, just on the Canadian border, practically. Oh, on the Canadian border, yes. And then accept the challenge to design a new house for Heidelberg Street. Design a picture of the house you would like to build and add it to the slideshow. Using the detail, generating questions. The lesson has questions for you. Write an elaborate segment describing the house that you think would make a perfect addition to the neighborhood. Now, what is it about Magic Mike, the Magic Trash? What is it about Heidelberg Street? What is it about Detroit, Michigan? Detroit, Michigan, during a particular time in the 1960s, 1970s, experienced something called urban blight. And that is when, for economic reasons, families abandoned houses. Neighborhoods fell to ruin. And the city was tasked with the responsibility of plowing those houses over and clearing the lots. Yeah, the properties, the houses were condemned and so on. Mike, our Tyree, sorry, our artist, saw something different in these houses and created art. So the next slide in the lesson, you're able to, I just wanted to show you what was in her lesson about Tyree. And she writes vacation lots, abandoned houses, trash, lots of trash. Heidelberg Street was in trouble. Imagine the street in your neighborhood. Imagine if everybody just moved out, left everything right there, trash blowing around. Crime moves into the house, and they were like operating criminal activities out of the houses. You know, how would you feel about it if your grandmother lived there? If you lived across the street from one of these houses, you would not be happy about that at all. So Tyree Guyton loved his childhood home, and that's where his grandpa Sam taught him to paint the world. I love that in the story and in real life, Tyree had a mentor, his grandfather Sam. So he wanted to wake people up, to make them see Detroit's crumbling communities. Paintbrush in hand, Tyree cast his artistic spell, transforming everyday junk into magic trash. Soon their local kids and families joined Tyree in rebuilding their neighborhood. They saw the vision, discovering the healing power of art along the way. So they can click here and they can watch the video. I have a very short video for you to See, so you can see what the Heidelberg Project is about. This video is available for free at YouTube. I was able to grab a copy that doesn't have all the ads around it, so for this presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm at the Heidelberg Project this evening in Detroit, Michigan. Let's go check it out. The Heidelberg Project is a two-block outdoor art environment whose name stems from its location on Heidelberg Street in East Detroit. Beginning 30 years ago, the founder of the project, Tyree Guyton, saw the decaying and abandoned homes of his neighborhood and wanted to shed light on this problem. Encouraged by his grandfather to do something about the issue, Guyton, with the help of his grandfather and neighborhood children, began collecting everyday discarded objects, making sculptures and painting old houses to brighten his street that was falling apart. The two blocks are full of random objects like this moose head in a shopping cart, decorated sidewalks, old toys, rusting cars, old TV sets, and clocks. Walking through the project, one wonders who all of these old things once belonged to. Were they a part of one of the now abandoned homes that you see walking throughout the neighborhood? Where are the families who once owned them? Guyton is attracting attention to the current state of Detroit and making a statement through art. His neighborhood and the city of Detroit are worth fighting for. Heidelberg Project has not been without opposition from the city and its neighbors, who initially saw it as an eyesore, complained about all of the visitors, and questioned if it was really art. Disagreeing with Guyton's ideas in the project, the city demolished certain parts in 1991 and 1999. In addition, suspicious and senseless fires burned down 12 of the art installations in only an 18-month period in 2013 and 2014. Some of the buildings, including a house called the Doll House or Party Animal, which was a house covered in stuffed animals, and the Penny House, were completely destroyed. After others burned down, such as the House of Soul, Guyton set to work right away to return it to its former glory. Regardless of the opposition and arson, the project lives on. Always staying positive, Guyton looks at the fires as a way to imagine new things for the project and to improve what's already there. Guyton's persistence and positivity and his signature use of bright colors and large polka dots make us hopeful about the project and the city's future.
So interesting. The Heidelberg Project inspired the biography about Tyree and his art. Notice how the two, you could actually even tie in the polka dots. So the kids have learned about Heidelberg. Maybe you could talk about urban blight, something that I seriously doubt is experienced in your country, seeing that history is so beautifully preserved for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's just not the case in some of our urban cities here in the United States. But you will be able to find lots and lots of pictures of the existing houses and have a wonderful discussion about the animal house, which is featured here in the center. That house was destroyed. It was covered originally with discarded stuffed animals. He literally just nailed them to the house, called Animal House. How clever is that? But the city saw it as an eyesore. They plowed it under. They got a judge to say it is art, which I think is really interesting. Art is in the eye of the beholder, certainly. So what is art? And then I've got the City of Seoul photograph, the house covered with records in the bottom left. So very interesting. What do you do with urban blight? Well, Tyree saw art and made it live. So now we're going to create our own masterpiece. I've got some very elementary examples and some more sophisticated examples for you. But this should conclude the slideshow. But again, if your children are doing remote learning, they could literally run through this lesson on their own with very little supervision. Questions have been provided that'll help them think about how are we going to go about creating our house. Well, start with, well, what color is it? What shape is it? And what size? Are we big, little, 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, or so on? How old is it? And so they start thinking about what they're going to create. One of our youngest students came up with our cute little addition to the Heidelberg street. And it is a striped house. It's a little rainbow house. And we've got all sorts of fun things on there. So they can read about that. It's from a 2nd grade student. And we have another example. And I love the roof line in this. They were thinking about the angles of roofs. So that's very cool. We've got a sidewalk coming up with all sorts of details. And I love the fact that they address the white space beyond the house in this particular picture. We can already use an object that's there. For example, give a teacher and a kid a milk carton and just stand back, watch all the different things they can do. So ours were displayed in the library or school library media center for everyone to love and appreciate. It looks a little bit like the artist Gaudí, doesn't it, on the far left? And we can talk about the beautiful Gaudi-inspired houses in Barcelona that were eyesores to people, but now they're the most famous art attractions, I argue, in Barcelona. Those gorgeous, gorgeous buildings. So maybe Tyree was onto something when he saved his beloved childhood neighborhood. And I love to do, this is my 10th idea for you. We are getting close to the end. I love to put my students, doesn't matter what age, I want them to evaluate. I'm not judge and jury in my classroom. I have an opinion and I will give it to them when I evaluate their work and their effort. But I also want them to be able to critically look at another person's efforts and not to be critical as in a negative sense, but I created this very positive experience for the students to go around and take a look at the different projects, the particular project that we created for this class. So yeah, we do projects all year. I want them to become an evaluator. So visit every project. I give them clipboards. They walk around with their clipboards. They're very important because they are. Can you find exemplary examples of the following? A creative or original idea, and write that down. You see, no one is getting put down. Everyone is getting lifted up. So what idea did you see that you found to be particularly creative or original? What project would you like to try? What a great idea, putting polka dots all over. I'd like to try that. What do you think? What project showed you the best use of illustrations or graphics? And which project was thoughtfully displayed? And I made everything worth 20%. And then the student would get that, individual students would get that particular feedback. Some people would, and you wouldn't even think. Another student might think that your idea was really great, and how wonderful that is, that to get that kind of reaction from your peers. So this never, I'm telling you, my friends, it never failed to generate positive discussions and positive feedback where the children really enjoyed studying the details of another student's projects. They weren't so worried about their own evaluation. They were out there giving a critical eye to the other projects in the room. And we will be coming near the end, with this very, very, very fun project. It's called Using Tone. And tone, I put the definition up there for my memory as much as anybody else, but a tone is a literary device that conveys the author's attitude towards the subject that you're going to be writing about. And examples of tone are joy and anxiety and a calm voice, curiosity, a caring voice or an attitude, thoughtful, tired, etc. And it's quite okay to use slang and figurative language, such as metaphors and similes. Let me show you a couple examples. We're going to create tone poems with our students. Let's start with something quite simple. And that, and that is, let's put a topic in the center. And great for Mondays. Think about what you did over the weekend. Doesn't matter how simple or how complex. Put an activity in that center bubble. Again, we're interacting again, yeah. And let's come up with 6 details about that particular activity. Minimal writing, lots of thinking. We can put more ideas in there if you want, but have them edit down to your top ideas. So we'll start with a graphic. Then we will start using these ideas and tease them out into phrases where someone who's reading our tone poem, which does not have to rhyme, poems don't necessarily rhyme, can get the tone or the feeling of our activity. I have an example. This weekend in America, we had our big feast weekend, and it was Thanksgiving. And in our country, we have the turkey and the whole thing. Basically, my friends, it's a holiday where the mom or the grandmother, such as myself, spends 2 days in the kitchen cooking for everybody who eats in 15 minutes. And then it's another day of washing dishes and then a week putting stuff back. So happy Thanksgiving to all my American friends. But in the middle of all that, we do break and we play cards. And our favorite card game that we play as a family is Uno. Uno is a deck of cards that have numbers and colors on the cards, and it's a big, thick deck of cards. And I'm the only one who can shuffle the deck because my hands are very big. So I get to shuffle all the cards and we play Uno. We play Uno for hours. So I put Uno in the center of as my topic. Very simple. It's a card game. And then I put the ideas in my little flower daisy ring around my topic. And then extended those ideas into simple phrases. And this is my tone poem. See if you can pick up on my tone. The emotion is friendly competition, even though everybody loves to win, but friendly competition. Shuffled cards, red, green, blue, yellow. My turn to match the colors. Pick up 2 cards, Poppy. Poppy is our name for Grandpa there. One of the cards is just devious, and if you lay it down, and it skips the next person's turn. So you're still sitting there with all your cards, and you can't do anything until it comes around to you again. So skip you, and then Uno. So finally. So I hope you see the simplicity of it. Any activity will do, from the more complex of getting on a plane to just shuffling a deck of cards and then thinking about the details about that. Many of my students didn't have elaborate holidays, didn't have tons of family around. Some holidays can be very lonely, but it could even be about reading a book, of turning the page, finding a new word on the page that you had to look up. So what is the tone? Focus on the tone. If it's an exciting thing, build some exclamations in there. If it's more somber, think of the words that would help convey that tone. And a way to besides a graphic organizer, which is fine, but it's a piece of paper, or it lives on a device somewhere. How about our little baker's dozen here, and let's make our tone poems come to life. So we've got our poem and our tone. Now pull out the glue gun, get a water bottle, and get on Amazon. And for very, very, very little money, you can buy bags of these charms, these little silicone and even metal charms, silicone rubber charms that can go on bracelets things. We're not going to put them on bracelets. We're going to put them in our water bottle, and not just any water bottle, one of our small drinking water bottles. We're going to put colored food coloring in there, and our poem will go on the water bottle. Our water will reflect the color of our emotion. And then we're going to carefully select charms that will enhance the tone. And we're going to put them into the bottle and finish our product just like that. Now that is the smiley face. It is just, we just glued the charm on top of the water bottle. So when you're looking down on the water, you see that happy face. These are happy children, but you can see where we taped our poems onto the water bottle, and our charms are down there at the bottom that we can shake up and float our charms around and enjoy them. I've done this activity with my middle school to high school students for years. Those kids, 10 years later, they still have their tone poems. So it's something that they create, that they actually treasure. Not that I'm surprised, but they're beautiful sun catchers as well. Well, my friends, there's your baker's dozen. But wait, one more idea, I've researched this. You actually have this. Go to your paint store. This is for free. They have your paint samples. And actually in Holland, your paint sample strips are more elaborate and more beautiful than anything we have down at our hardware store. But pick up your paint color strips. Each paint color has a title. It tells you what the color is. For example, here's this top one is called Snowbank. I literally want this job where I look at colors and I give it a name. How relaxing and creative would that be? We're going to use our 7 paint colors and create a poem out of these that's going to reflect our emotion that we want. So this one, yes, these are these colors, and you normally would not pick something so dark and dreary. But look at these words, these fabulous words: snowbank, moon dance, wayward winds, glistening gray, flannel pajamas, black flame, and of course, alley cat. So can we take these phrases, working with a partner? Can we develop these into phrases that would create a tone poem? What emotion do these words evoke? Let's develop these into a poem. And poems, of course, do not rhyme. So I found a very, 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 very gray one. And I figured that that's going to be the paint strip that nobody else would pick. So I picked it, and it had wonderful colors like Eiffel Tower and intuitive and silver dollar and hourglass and granite, and thought about a particular place that I absolutely adore, a landmark. It was the Eiffel Tower, and I just created, used these words to create the emotion around seeing the Eiffel Tower. You never forget it. So something like that. I put it on my water bottle and I would look at it every day. I believe I have maybe one more minute yet to share my final idea. My final idea is more than a baker's dozen. If you have the wonderful responsibility of assessing student projects, I recommend this particular book. It was developed by Julia Roberts, Tracy Inman out of Western Kentucky University. It is a book that is so full of rubrics to evaluate any project that you can possibly imagine. Why is this such a special rubric? It is because it is not based on a scale of 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, but 1 to 6, with 6 being a professional level product. It raises the ceiling for our gifted kids. Yes, a score of 5 can still get your grade anxious child the A or the top score, but that 6 is reserved for the student who put in extra credit, not the parent, because dad happens to be an architect and they've got a 3D printer at work. No, this is done by the child, but a child who really put that thought and skill into producing a product that was just above that exceeded teacher expectations. So I use these rubrics all the time. You can do plays, projects, and everything. Something to discuss with your colleagues would be, what idea did you see today that you'd like to try on your own? Hopefully there is something that you would like to try right out of the gate on your Monday morning. Hopefully it is biography based. I'll leave you with words that inspire me. Creativity is observable imagination, and we must encourage our students to dream on every day. There are no silly ideas. Bedankt, my friends. I thank you so much. This is my email that I check a million times a day. Please feel free to email me, contact me personally. I would love to be in touch with you. And I look forward to coming back to Holland very soon. Thank you.
Rosine, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. What I like on the presentation is that you gave us 12 tiny little ideas showing that creativity is not a very big thing, the things that you can do with your entire classroom and where you can use your imagination and where children can use their imagination and therefore make it as big or simple as possible. This is where we stop the recording. And for those who are not online right now, watch it later, please come back at another moment to see one of our other webinars.